Howdy, this is a righteous farmer. I know I can't compete with all these crazy videos we love to watch, but I'm in the mood to make some myself. And just maybe I'll be able to give you some hints and tricks about successful home gardening. Hi y'all, Mr. Oldtimer here. In case this is the first time you're tuning in, this video is actually part of the Righteous Farmer series where I'm doing a show and tell about my vegetable garden, how I plant, maintain, harvest, and utilize my homegrown garden goodies. You should go ahead and subscribe to the channel here so you can catch up on all that stuff. This time around, I thought I'd take a supper break from the plow and show you what you can do with some of your plunder once you have it. We're making deer stew, I believe Yankees and swells call it venison stew, on a stormy afternoon. Good thing we got a nice dry roof over our heads. You know, officially the weather's supposed to be like this here. Pleasant temps and strong storms. And you know what? It did not disappoint on this day of June 7th. No siree. Here's what it looked like on the radar while we were busy cooking the pot of beast stew. This is a snip from our weather guy, James Spann in Birmingham, and I don't think he'd mind a bit.
Winds, high potential. Winds could gust to 60, 70 miles per hour. Widespread tree and power line damage and structural damage a possibility. So if you're in your home in the Birmingham metro right now, we want you to be sheltered like this is a tornado warning.
But back to the deer cocktail. I know you may be in a hurry. Just get the recipe and run. And if that's the case, my apologies. I get it. I'm the same way. However, I'm not trying to run this video spectacular out any further than necessary, I promise. The problem is there is no set down recipe and a ton and a gob of nuance. We're making it up as we go along. And I mean, this isn't our first deer stew rodeo by any means. Don't get me wrong. But the fact is, after several cooking sessions up to this point, I have yet to be satisfied. But this is pure chemistry I'm about to unleash on you. So I hope you have your pencil handy. If you happen to actually read the title of this documentary, it won't come as a surprise to you to learn that this turned out to be the best deer stew we ever made, by far. I trusted my instincts and it paid off big time. With one teeny exception we will get to, I skipped the tutorials and just got down to it. You work your stew this way and it will pay off for you as well. As a matter of fact, the more demanding you are about your victuals, the better you are going to love to gnaw up this tasty version. After a good knife sharpening, I go to work on some deer steak. This is from a deer creature harvested locally by my son last year. You'll see me here trimming off the last bits of what they call silver skin. That stuff stays fair chewy even after a good boil, so best to knock it on out. This here movie presentation is about deer, but you must know it will work with any coarser meat. Like a roast cow, this and that. I mean, I wouldn't do this with a ribeye. Don't be absurd. But your tougher meats are just fine and dandy. For the newbie guys to venison, here's the deal. If the guy what brung it takes care of the meat, that is, cooling it down as quickly as possible, and is diligent in the processing, you won't ever have any of that wild, gamey flavor thing you so often hear about. We never had a problem with that here because we don't abuse the harvest. It's too precious to waste. The steak, in this case, is from the hind quarter and is cut up into bite-sized pieces like you do if you were to fire up a wok. Same difference. As a matter of fact, I douse the meat down with teriyaki, which is my favorite marinating fluid. That and a couple of other things, principally Tony powder, which stands in for salt, and some pepper, and some garlic powder. The teriyaki helps to tenderize the meat, so they say, and the other stuff gives it a yummy flavor, although this prep would come in much handier for stir-fry than stew. You see, the meat will be boiled, and in the end, it's pretty much just meat. It kind of boils all that stuff out of there. Ha. Still, I like to put the seasoning to it. You will too. It's fun. Let the stuff marinate in the bag for a while. Now you can use it immediately if you like. However, I let mine simmer for a couple or 3 hours in the bag in the refrigerator. You see, we were shooting for supper time, so we started cooking about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I had planned on boiling the meat for 3 hours, but much to my surprise, it was completely tender after 1 hour. I suppose our new cook pot, a heavy glazed iron monstrosity, served as a low-grade pressure cooker. A splash of oil, in this case olive oil, our favorite for the pan, followed by the deer meat. It needs to be browned. At any time you do stew or roast, brown the meat. Sear it. This is the absolute secret to great stew meat. Cooking, brown, braise, sear to start, then cook as normal. So into the pot goes the meat, and it's browned. Puts a yummy flavor to it. You really don't want to ever start off with raw meat. You want to cook that stuff up some before you get busy making your stew or roast. At this point in the cook, I'm about busting a shirt button to just get on with it and do my mad scientist chef routine. Man, you gotta have some fun in the kitchen once in a while. You know what? You gotta. Besides meat, the second thing you need is beef broth. They say you can make it. I find it better to just get some. If you have none handy, you could make up a quart of bouillon from cubes. But the quart bottle is a lot more handy and tasty too, I believe. I nursed this box of juice all the way through the build, and I added about a quarter of it here. More comes later. Next comes the homemade, home-canned tomato product to go into the locally harvested deer product. As far as I'm concerned, it don't get no better. If you don't have homegrown, get you some cans of tomatoes to equal a quart. My advice to you, if you go the can route, is to stick with generic tomatoes. They are cheaper and they don't make your broth taste like spaghetti sauce. Stick with the cheap tomatoes. Use tomatoes and juice, not tomato juice, okay? The tomatoes will cook down. Next up is the bay leaves. I used 3. Gotta tell you, this is a specialized taste. Either you adore it or you don't. If you don't know and you are chicken, leave it out. In my case, while the bay leaves are well in date, they didn't impart a whole lot of flavor for some reason. So I put 3 more in later. Now, if you use the bay leaves, as you should, be sure not to crush them so you can get them back out later. You really don't want to bite into a bay leaf. So, you'll take them out at the end of the cook, or somewhere like that. You'll take them out once the goodie gets out of them. So, do like you feel about it. As already mentioned, my plan was to let the meat simmer for 3 hours, but at the end of the first, it was already fork tender. So the next thing up was the little red taters, which are a tasty treat. Love those things. What we didn't show because we forgot was that the little red carrots had already been put into the pot. Did I say little red carrots? I mean little orange carrots. Yeah, they're orange, they're not red. I don't think I'd use red carrots. Might not do that. The little orange carrots had already been put into that pot for nearly an hour before we put in the taters, because as you know, the carrots takes a little longer. At this stage, it's time for a taste test. Mostly looking for salt and sweet at this point. I'm the world's worst to add sugar, by the way, but this batch amazingly needed not a bit. I can tell you one reason. The homegrown tomatoes were put away when they were good and ripe. I know that for a fact. Take a note, jot that one down. Good ripe tomatoes. The cup of coffee was not added to the mixture, by the way. Near the end of the cook now, tossing in a can of tasty green peas and a sack of homegrown Golden Queen sweet corn from the freezer from last year. You see, the stew does have homegrown tomatoes and corn in it. There's something about eating food you raised yourself that if you have even an ounce of romance in you, you can't beat it. And probably don't have to tell you this. It's good to know how to grow food just in case. There may come a day when the Waffle House isn't open. If you're living on some other continent and don't know what a Waffle House is, look it up. Frankly, I could care less what country you're living in. Just be sure to drop a line and let me know you're watching. I appreciate more than you can appreciate you taking the time to watch my stuff. I don't tell you that often enough, and that's my bad, okay? Lastly comes the thickening agent. Now, after watching a YouTube video, I decided to use flour since my cornstarch was out of date. Following the instructions, we wound up with cake batter, but I poured it into the stew anyway. That was a moron move. I knew better. The vid instructed to use 3/4 cup of flour. That didn't sound right when I did it, but I did it because I said, well, these people must know what they're talking about. That was a vast boo-boo. Next time I'll start off with 1/4 cup of flour or maybe a couple tablespoons of cornstarch. Good gracious. Jeez, that thickened the stew so much that it was well too thick. So I wisely added water to thin that stuff on back down. I didn't set out to make deer stew cake after all. Jeez. Well, see, the water worked at least well enough. I might have liked it just a tad thinner, but it was okay. In the end, we got it adjusted, and it turned out just fine, and you will too. So, less is better than more. Along the way, several good dollops of Worcestershire was added. Also, a splash of smoked paprika, some pepper. Carefully add in your favorite ingredients, tasting along the way. You can add too little and always add more spices, but it's hard to unadd something when it gets overdone. But you knew that. Aha! You see, I was working a plan. I thought it might be nice to have some fresh bread to go along with our non-camp stew. You know, make it old-timey. So we loaded up the bread maker, and it dinged about 7 p.m. The stew was already done. We were just waiting on the bread. Eventually, it was time to get on with the chewing. Now, I fully apologize for the poor lighting. I must have forgotten to buy a Klieg light the other day. Even in the gloom of the living room, which is also our eating place, we could see the bowls. And that was the important thing. We could see the bowls so we could load up our mouth snappers. Honestly, this was the first batch of deer stew that I ever really and truly and dearly loved. And I'll tell you something else. The next night it was even better. And you know what made it? For once, I went on my own cooking skills and did not add in a package of the store-bought instant gravy mix or stew mix, you know, to put some extra spices and thicken it up. We just made it up as we went along, doing what seemed right on, and by golly, it turned out real good. So I give this demo and recipe to you to try. Be brave, go slow, but be inventive. Meat, taters, carrots, some other veggies, quart beef bouillon, your favorite spices, taste along the way, thicken at the end. Make stew memories and let us know what you did. Wow! See you back up in the garden in the next video in the thrilling episode 9 of The Righteous Farmer. Wow!